Okay, let's do a quick tutorial on bringing footage into DaVinci Resolve and outputting that footage as an image sequence either for use in a background plate in Autodesk Maya or in separate tracking software. For this one we're going to be using our plate in Autodesk Maya. So we need to prep it here in DaVinci Resolve. This is also the place that we do a lot of our compositing work, but that'll be a different short tutorial. So first and foremost, I need to go to my media page, and if I'm going to create any bins or anything, that's what I want to do right here. And I can just right click and create a new bin, and remember, bins are where we store like footage. So I might say Toulouse, just to create a folder for Control I to import. And this is some footage, that I have. That does need to be prepped actually. It does need to be made into sequence so that I can use it for tracking and a background plate later. So Control I to import, bring my footage in. Now this footage, I think we're going to remove. If I want to get rid of a clip, I can right click on it and remove selected clip, just like so. And now this is footage that needs to be tracked, so I can move it all into the Toulouse bin. And this is Toulouse, France. This is the Couvent des Ursulins, which is this beautiful church that these nuns were kind enough after some time to let me work in there. So anyhow, if we click on one of these clips, you can see up here that we are in 8K. Certainly do not need quite that much resolution, of course. And so let's look at what I need to do to get this footage from here, okay, over into Maya. Now first and foremost, because this is 8K footage, or if it's 4K or any resolution higher than what I need, this is going to be very difficult for me to play back in real time, any way, shape, or form. So what we're going to do is we're going to just say we're going to use this piece of footage right here. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to generate optimized media. Now on a slow computer this could take a little bit of time because that is a big piece of footage. However, on this computer it's fairly quick, and so we don't really need to worry about that. The other thing is the timeline that I'm going to create. I really do not need this much resolution for a Maya plate. I probably would leave it at this resolution for a background tracking plate in a program like PF Track, or if I were 3D tracking the camera in Fusion, I would want all of this detail. Sorry, I'm trying to zoom in here. And if we zoom in to 100% actual size, it's got like a lot of detail. It's actually much larger than this. I've scaled things down once again so that everything appears larger. Hopefully you guys can see things better. Anyhow, so I don't need this footage to be 8K. I just need it to be sort of, I think for a Maya plate, 1K will be fine. So what I'll do is I'll switch over to my edit page here. I'm going to right click in an empty space. Remember, our favorite thing to do, or my favorite thing to do, at least the workflow that I prefer, is to right click in an empty space in our media pool here and go to timelines and create a new naked timeline. Now this is where I will be able to set that format. Now the format that we'll need, okay, if we go back, go here to media, whoops, let me cancel that real quick. If we come back here to media, you'll see that my footage is 8192 by 4320, and all we need to do is a little bit of math on that, and pull up our handy dandy calculator, and we know that 4320 divided by 4 is, well, let me put this where you guys can see, 1080, and 8192 Now I already know what these are, but I want you guys to see that sometimes you just got to do a little bit of math to figure these out. So that's what I want my composition in the end, my timeline to be, is 2048 by 1080 to match. So it's a quarter size of what the final footage would be. Now you guys will leave yours at 1920 by 1080 24, and so I'll go into the 2048 by 1080 DCI, and that'll create a timeline that's about a quarter the size of this footage, and it'll fit the footage to it, right? So I can now take this footage, which has been optimized, drop it on my timeline, and it'll have a decent playback speed. There we go. Now, what I need to do at this point is, generally I don't want the audio from this shot, so I'm going to right click on my footage and click on link clips, and it's going to unlink these two clips. I'll click off of them, click back onto the audio, and this is important. I want to hit backspace, not delete, and I'll hit backspace, pardon me, and that will take my audio out. If I want to keep my audio, keep your audio. That's fine. I don't need it. I'm going to be putting separate audio in. We do separate recording when we're on location like this. So I don't even need the audio really to sync at this point. I just need an image sequence that I can use in Maya, and I'll be dealing with all those other things later in the composite. Now there is one other thing that I want to do. If I go to deliver this right now, in other words, to go make my image sequence, I might decide that I need a bit of color grading or something just to make it look a bit better in Maya, to make matching the plate easier. I do want it pretty close to what the final color grade should be. You can see that there's a bit of haze in here. So I will go to my color tab here, and I am going to do a few adjustments just to make sure that this looks pretty close. Doesn't have to be dead on, because again, remember, you guys have seen we can do a lot of this in the composite. However, I want to get the color temperature close. To get that color temperature, I'm going to find a white point. Don't worry, I'm going to do kind of a separate tutorial on this for you guys so that you don't feel left out in the cold. I'm setting this stuff up right now for myself. We have a pretty accurate white point already. The manner in which I shoot is generally accurate on set. Once again, just because the less work I have to do later, the better. And so I'm going to check different points of this video just to make sure that everything looks the way I want. So none of my values are clipped, everything looks pretty good, but I'm going to adjust. You can see. So the way I shoot video, this is shot in Canon Log, or what's known as B-RAW, Blackmagic RAW. It's a little different from your cameras, but you can see it allows me a lot of control over the saturation, the contrast, everything in the space. That is what we're looking for. Ideal footage is actually pretty flat, and that is what we want. I'll probably dehaze this area after the fact. We'll do something like bring that haze down. However, for now, I'm really more concerned with these parts looking acceptable and the lighting being good in here. And it's pretty good. Little bit dark. I'm going to lift that just a little bit, and that'll just make our composite or our plate use in Maya a bit more efficient. So I do want a little bit of a color grade on here. This is by no means a final color grade, and I know you guys don't understand color grading yet. However, I do want you to know that when I'm outputting an image sequence, I generally don't want to just output it sort of, I'm going to disable this really quickly. I don't just want to output it like however it comes out of the camera. If it looks bad, you're going to have fewer options because of the way the cameras that you guys use shoot. However, because of our log or our B-RAW, we've got a lot of options to color grade here, and so I'm just going to make sure that it looks pretty close to final footage for my plate. So anyways, you shouldn't have to do too much of that yourself. Next, I'm going to move over to deliver, and under deliver we are going to set things up. so that we will have an image sequence that works for us in our main CGI program. And this setup will generally work for, well, we're setting up specifically for Maya, however, it'll work fine for any program that needs an image sequence to be used in it. And most CG programs do need image sequences. They will not track or work with just normal H.264 MKV footage or anything like that. So first and foremost, we want to give a file name, and I will call this, say, Ursulines _1, and this is important, dot. I need to put that dot, that period, after my file name. That is super, super, super important. There's a lot of things that can go wrong if you don't do that, and I want you to kind of keep that in mind. Now, next thing I want to do is find a location where my footage is going to go. I am not actually going to render this footage because I already have just a ton of sequences and renders and things like that I already have on my drives here. You can see that these are, I have everything sort of organized in a certain way. And if I were to show you, though, I have a folder called sequences. In that folder I have a subfolder called image sequences, and in that folder you can see that I have folders of image sequences that I have created to use in my work. Now there's quite a bit of it, and I'd prefer not to create any more right now. In fact, I need to delete that just to clean things up. However, this is what, I'll go through the rigmarole. So I'll create a new folder. We'll call this Ursulines 1. And I'm calling it Ursulines 1 because I have multiple cuts and multiple takes. So I'll have Ursulines 1, 2, 3, etc. I'll double click to activate that folder, and we'll save it here. Whoops. It got renamed. That's my B. Ursulines _1 dot. Alright, so that is going into that folder right here under my image sequence, Ursulines 1. So we're making sure that everything gets put in its right place. Once you start to produce image sequences, I don't want these going just anywhere. I don't want them flying around my system. As I said, we produce a lot of data. It is incumbent upon us to have good file hygiene and manage our sort of virtual real estate well. Next, we're going to come down and switch render from single clip to individual clips. I will change my format from QuickTime to TIFF. You can use JPEG or PNG, EXR. You can use any still image format. I prefer TIFFs. They seem to sort of retain the best bit depth for me, for the compression, for the size. I have used PNG, I have used EXR in different circumstances. You can choose what I choose. This is the easiest way to go. I like the format of TIFF. However, JPEG will be a little lighter weight. I don't like the compression that happens. It's minute. Nonetheless, I see it and it bothers my eye. I want very clean images when I'm matching my plate. So I've set this up to export video as a TIFF sequence. The codec can stay 8-bit. We don't need to switch to 16-bit or anything like that. So we're just going to stay here in 8-bit. Pardon me. I apologize about that. Next, I'll switch over to File. And by the way, each step is important. You have to do all of these steps for this to work, and it becomes muscle memory once you've done it a few times. The next thing I need to make certain is that I use 4 digits in the file name. Not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8. 3 is okay, 2 is okay. I go to 4. 4 is going to be plenty. 4 gives you enough room for thousands of frames. So I want to make certain that that gets set. If I don't do that, oftentimes programs like Maya, Houdini, PFTrack, Unreal Engine, anything we're working in where we have to bring an image sequence in for motion tracking, match moving, plate matching, anything like that, we're going to have problems. They prefer to see a smaller digit count. So we're going to switch this to 4. And this part right here is actually the most important thing I could possibly do out of everything we've done. And that is to tick the box that makes sure each clip starts at frame 1. Really quickly, just to tell you why, this is maybe the 5th or 6th cut on this memory card. It will start at that frame, which means this video right here, the first frame is not frame 1. It is technically on the information here. It is frame 4434. That's normal. It's a feature, not a bug. But Maya will freak out if I were to pull it in that way. Maya would have to play 4,334 frames before it would actually start to play my image sequence. Hopefully you guys can see the problem there. So we're just going to make sure that every clip we export as an image sequence always starts as frame 1. If you don't understand what I meant by that, simply follow the recipe, because we're going to go through it again. So again, under video, I'm going to make sure to set my format to TIFF. I will then switch. Well, we'll start as single clip. We're going to change to individual clips, change our format to TIFF. Then I will go over to File. Under File, I'm going to make certain that there are 4 digits in my file name, and the box that is checked for each clip starts at frame 1. I'm also going to make certain that my file name has a name, dot, and then it'll go into a folder where I can keep track of it. I'll then add it to my render queue, like so. It will pop up over here in my render queue, and I'll just click render all, and that will send it over to my folder. This will render pretty quickly. Alright, that image sequence is done, and I was wrong. This would have been frame 288,567 is what we would have started at if we had not ticked this box that says each clip starts at frame 1. Now there are some things in your camera you can set so that it'll always reset to frame 1. However, for production purposes, I generally do not want that. I need to keep track of the entire film. So anyways, there we go. That is rendering an image sequence in DaVinci Resolve. The next tutorial will talk about using that image sequence as a background plate in Autodesk Maya. Alright, that's it for now. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know what you think. If you have any problems, let me know in the comments, or if you have any questions or any requests for clarification. Otherwise, remember, drop kick that like button and subscribe. Alright guys.